Good morning, Richard Calhoun, Creekside Realty. We're here to discuss Silicon Valley and the Greater Bay Area real estate marketplace. We're using data through midnight last night. The slides that are flashing on the screen are what we'll be going over in the next 30 minutes. There are some unique features here that you might want to listen to, like overbid, frequency of price reductions, etc. Let's get into it. Here's a summary of what we're going to go over. DUI is days of unsold inventory, how quickly the market's turning over. DOM is days on market. The 75th percentile is the long typical seller. How long is it taking the longest seller to sell the property? This is the seller's price adjustments, typically in the downward direction. This is how frequently sellers reduce their price. In other words, what percentage of sellers are reducing their price. This is buyers coming in and over or under bidding, the total average, so it includes the ones above and below. How frequently overbidding is, ignoring underbidding. The appreciation since the last 9 months in 2015. The 10 percentile, the median, and the 90 percentile in each of the 17 geographical micro market areas in Silicon Valley, which is 3 counties: Santa Clara County, Alameda County, and San Mateo County. And then I've added in the payment most recently over here on the right for the 10 percentile, the median, and the 90 percentile. Jumping right into the first heat map slide. I'm currently defining 7 to 42 days to be a seller's marketplace and is some shade of red pink in color. From 42 days to 78 as a neutral and is white in color, regardless of the magnitude along that line. And then from 78 days to 145 days is some shade of blue in color and is a buyer's market. From 145 days up is saturated blue. We rarely get up that high, but you can see right now the San Mateo County coast is at 131 and a half days of unsold inventory. Days of unsold inventory is one of the key indicators. So this gives you a quick snapshot going back in time each week. You can see the current week on the right-hand side here is pretty red. You come back to the beginning part of the year and it was pretty white overall. And you get back into last year and there was a fair amount of, actually it's in January, there was a fair amount of blue. Moving on to days on the market. This is relatively new index, and what it's looking at is how long is it taking the typical long seller to sell their property. In other words, 3/4 of the sellers are selling faster than this time frame, and only 25% of the sellers are taking longer. But in general, when you look at this, a lot of these are right around 10 days, especially in Alameda County. Santa Clara County is more closer to 12 days, and San Mateo County is probably approaching 3 weeks. And again, from 7 days to 21 days, 1 to 3 weeks is basically a seller's marketplace. Again, anything less than 7 days is going to be pretty rare and is saturated red. 21, 3 weeks to 7 weeks is basically a neutral marketplace. From 7 weeks on up is a saturated buyer's marketplace, with 135 being saturated blue. This is looking at the average price reductions that sellers are taking. This is the sellers' reductions prior to accepting their offer. And it's a pretty tight index. In other words, there's not much variation in it, so it's not necessarily a very useful index. The reason it's useful is you don't have to wait for escrows to close to get this data point. In other words, if more sellers are taking price reductions, the market is slowing down, and therefore you know about it without waiting the 5 weeks for escrows to close. From 98 to 99.25 is the range of a buyer's marketplace. Now, you're going to say, sellers take bigger than a 2% price reduction. Absolutely. But the vast majority of the sellers are taking no price reduction, so they're sitting at 100. So for every 10 sellers that stay at 100, if one person reduces their price by 10%, that's going to only be a 1% overall price decrease. The numbers are very concentrated. From 99.75 to 101.1 is what I'm calling a seller's marketplace. 100.1 and above is saturated red. The reason that's so tight is it's rare that you get sellers raising their asking price, but we in fact have that right now in Union City and Newark at 101.4%, or up in Foster City at 100.6%. So it does happen, but it is pretty rare. This is the frequency of price reductions, how common is price reductions, and you can see these are pretty uncommon. The vast majority of the 17 micro market areas are in the low teens. A couple are in the single digits. The lowest one I picked right off the bat is Union City, Newark, at 3.6% of the sellers taking any sort of price reduction. This is the overbid. So this is flipping over and now looking at what the buyers are doing. When the buyers come in and make an offer, what are they doing with their offer price compared to their asking price? You can see the Bay Cities is 103.5%. You come down here to Berkeley at the high end at 115.6%. Anything over 101.1% is starting to be a seller's marketplace. From 99 to 101.5 is a neutral marketplace. And you might think over asking price is a neutral marketplace. That's just how Silicon Valley operates. It's rare. Even in the worst marketplaces we've had, about 15% of the offers come in over the asking price. And from 95% to 99 would be a buyer's marketplace. This is how common is overbidding. So right now in Santa Clara County, right around 3/4 of the offers being accepted are over asking price. In Alameda County, it's around 2/3. Although, you come down here to Oakland and 77%, more than 3/4 of the sellers are getting more than their asking price. But then you have that offset with Union City and Newark at 62%. And if you go back in the last slide, I think very few sellers in Union City and Newark were taking price reductions. And then for them to be one of the lower numbers in Alameda County is a little bit surprising. But that's why one of the reasons I look at so many metrics is to get a better handle on what the market's really doing. This is the appreciation since the last 9 months of 2015, and you can see the outer lying areas are where the appreciation is. Normally, the appreciation is more uniform than this, but we went through COVID and remote working, and all of a sudden the outlying areas became more desirable relative to the inlying areas. And you can see the areas close to the job centers are the areas that have had the worst appreciation. Yes, 2015 goes back before COVID, but whatever areas having the most recent best appreciation usually has the best appreciation all over the entire period you're looking at because of compounding. So this is exactly what we'd expect with the impact of COVID. Here's the sold price. Now you can see the areas closer to the Central Valley are more expensive. The outlying areas are more affordable. So now this is the monthly payment estimate. This is a fairly new index, and what it's looking at is Silicon Valley. So you're looking at the 3 areas combined. You're looking at the median down here. You're looking at the cheapest 10 percentile, and you're looking at the most expensive 10 percentile or the 90 percentile up here. And what's interesting to look at is the payments shot up and then the market went down. But when the market was actually going down, which is basically, middle of May to the August 1st, payments were actually going down. So there was clearly a time lag because it was this run up in payments that then created the cost to come down, which brought the payments back down. Then August improved a little bit and payments went back up. And then the end of the year, we went back down and now payments are going back up again. And then we can see we just went through a little bit of a correction, but right now we're in an upward trend. I'm making some assumptions and doing this on what the property tax rate is, what the insurance bill would be for every house. I'm using same numbers across it. I'm also assuming that, and it's the vast majority, I'm also using a 30-year fixed loan, 80%, and I'm using jumbo rates, which are more attractive than conforming rates right now. So these payments for the cheapest 10% are going to be a little bit on the low side because you can't get a jumbo rate loan on the low side. And I just didn't have time to take in all those nuances and at what rate do you flip back and forth. So I wanted to do it for more consistency. But it was interesting to see the time lag because payments started to rise and most people perceive the market peaked right here about May 1st, and that's actually when payments peaked and came back down. So the peak of the payments was sort of at the peak of what the perception of people's peak of the marketplace was. But if you believe that where I'm coming from, more the market peaked closer to Valentine's Day of 2023, and that was right when the payments started to go up. It's all the lag time of when you're reporting sold prices and those kinds of things, I think, that impact the data. Because when I first looked at this, it looked like, payments were actually going down while the market was crashing, and that's actually what it was doing, but it was reacting to this big run up is I think really what happened. Now what we're going to do is look at sellers asking price reductions. And each one on here is, it starts off as a monthly distribution, and the current month that we're talking about is the bold. So the absolute current month right now is the purple. The current that's bolded is minus 12 months. So a year ago is here. And then I'll bold each line as it comes up. And then we get to 3 months, I change over to weekly, because 3 months is 13 weeks. Then I go 12 weeks and every one becomes a week. So the recent times are a week. Blue down arrow, the market's decreasing. The red up arrow, the market's improving. If they're both on here, it's a plateau. The red's shadowed because it really shouldn't be here because we're in a decreasing marketplace. And I'll just step through here and you can see a huge decrease, another huge decrease, small decrease, big, fairly big increase, big decrease, decrease, small decrease, big increase, another big increase, plateau, increase, plateau, increase. And now they're bunched together and it's really hard to say when to go up and down. So I just put them all as a plateau because you can see there's some bounce from week to week. And now we're going to go up at this right there, this last week. And next week, we jumped up quite a bit. And that's pretty unusual because basically I'm using 35-day data points, 35 days, 5 weeks. And the difference between the purple line and the dashed green line is only 3 days. So 3 new days out of 35 caused that line to go up. So that's a little surprising, but also it's a little bit of how I look at the data. I'm only doing 2.5% increments to keep the data processing reasonable. And so what really happened is the purple line went from here to here on the data point, and Microsoft just curves the line for you automatically, and you can't get away with this because these really should be straight lines between the vertical lines, and Microsoft sort of rounds them off in some algorithm. So here is now flipping over and looking at overbidding. Overbidding is what the buyers come in and do compared to the seller's asking price. Same concept starting a year ago and then starting a month at a time jumps, and then when we get to 3 months we go to weekly. So there's 7 months. Now there's 3 months and 12 weeks, and so now everything else is weekly from this point forward. And so the current line, the purple line, actually there's the purple line, is down from the red dotted line, which is the best we ever had. So we're nowhere close to the best week we ever had, but we're on the best week of 2023. Now we're looking at active inventory, and for the most part, I have the current data points labeled out here for you. You can see that typically we're at 2,600 listings, and when you have 2 data points right on top of one another, they're hard to read, but I believe that number is going to be 1651 and 1653, and it might be 1681, I think it is. So the top of the 2 numbers is 1681. I can't tell you what the other number is, but I'm doing that to give you some indication of what the number is, because sometimes it's hard to read what the real number is on a scale. So we're somewhere right around 1,700 listings. Normally you're somewhere around 2,600. So we're 900 listings short of where you'd expect to be. The most listings we had this time of the year was 3,258. This is the number of offers that came in. This is how many buyers are out there. And you can see that we're basically tied for the record low. And it's not the record low, it's the 10 percentile. So it's the least you'd expect. In other words, I expect the market to be somewhere between the 10 and 90 percentile range. The blue line is the 10 percentile range. The red line is the 90 percentile range. And right now we're right on top of the blue, which is 2,224 offers. The most we had was 1,000 more than that at 3,226, and normally we're at a 3,016. We're missing about 800 listings, and that's more than 25% of the marketplace is just not happening. We're having a fairly fast-paced marketplace, but the volume is simply not there. Now we're looking at the days on sold inventory. This is how quickly is the market's turning over. Where we're right now is 26. You'd expect to be at 31. So even though Silicon Valley tends to be a very fast-paced marketplace, that would be at 31 days. We're actually outperforming that right now at 26 days. Now we're moving on to the 75th percentile days on market. So this is the long typical seller. So the fastest you'd expect the market to be is 12. Right where you'd expect it to be is at 17, and right now we're at 16. And the slowest you'd expect it to be is 22. To say that Silicon Valley in a slow marketplace sells 75% of their homes in 3 weeks, I think most areas of the country and maybe even of the world would say that's pretty remarkable. And that's just the shortage of housing we have here that shows that when a house comes on the market, buyers are willing to buy it. This is the ask price reduction over time. 10 percentile, 90 percentile, and median are based on the 10-year median, although I'm only showing 5 years worth of data. I don't think I need to go back and show the 10 years of data because you know where the data should be. It should be right on this gray line. And where are you? Right now, you're right on the gray line. It matches up identically, and that's why this number is bolded. It's not, I did not bold it. It's just you have the gray number at 99.5 and you have the purple line at 99.5, and they're on top of one another, and boom, you end up with the bolding effect. You'd expect it somewhere between 99.3 and 99.8. You can see right there, there's only normally a 0.5% swing from a hot seller's marketplace to a cold buyer's marketplace, which is why my market index is so close together on the heat map. Maybe that makes sense to you when you start seeing this. It's a very condensed index. I think it's still very valuable. And the fact that it's decreasing right now, it's going up, which is getting close to 100%, which means fewer sellers are taking price reductions, which means the market hasn't turned yet. And when you look at this, you can also see the market typically turns back here around April the 1st. We're still heating up, and in a cold marketplace, it stays colder longer, but you could almost even argue this is a plateau, and even in a hot marketplace, it's going down. Typically, you'd argue, and you come back here, and here's the beginning of second quarter, here's the beginning of third quarter, July 1st. We're roughly in the middle here somewhere. You can see that generally the median, the 10 percentile, the median, and the 90 percentile are all on a downward slope, but yet our actual data here is on an upward slope. By plotting this, we can see when the market's about ready to turn. I'm expecting it to turn. It typically turns, but this year may be different. And that's one of the reasons why you look at all the data. This is the frequency of asking price reductions. How common is it for sellers to take price reductions? And right now, just a little less than 10% of the sellers, 9.8% of the sellers are taking price reductions. In one of our worst marketplaces, only 15% of the sellers take a price reduction before they sell their property. So that means 85% of your data set is at 100%. And again, that's why it's so condensed, but I still believe it's a valuable indicator. Look at this indicator. Where did it turn? If we go back to 2022, here's going to be April the 1st, and basically it was already slowing down since basically Valentine's Day, and then basically somewhere around May 1st, it really slowed down rapidly. So if you can sit there and see this plateau before the cliff, and yeah, it's a mountain, but it's a cliff because you're going down in price. Your number of sellers taking a price reductions is increasing, which is a decreasing marketplace. And you see this happening, you can respond and probably, hopefully take advantage of it before you get this rapid change. Here's the average overbid. And again, it's the 10 percentile down here in the blue, where you'd expect the market to be at 106.8. Right now, the market's 106.5. On average, sellers are getting 6.5% above their asking price. So again, that's a pretty good marketplace. The most you'd expect it to be is 12.7. Now, of course, you have years where you're above your expectation. This is where you have your 99 percentile year, because this is your 90 percentile year. This is your 10 percentile year. And just last year, at the end of the second half of 2022, we were below where you'd expect the market to be. You have markets that exceed your expectations, and then those that fail short of your expectations, and that's what this graphs are comparing essentially. This is the frequency of overbidding. How common is it overbidding? Right now, 69% of the sellers are getting more than their asking price. Typically, it's 73%. Not quite as much sellers getting more than their asking price. The highest we typically would expect is 84%. The worst you'd expect is 61%. Sort of to say the worst of you're expecting and 61% of the sellers to be getting more than their asking price is pretty significant. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important, I believe, to have these trend lines on here, is so you have some idea of where you be. A lot of data reporters do seasonally adjusted numbers. This allows you to do your own seasonal adjustment. In other words, in end of January, you'd only expect 55% of the sellers to be getting more than their asking price. In, July 1st, you'd expect 75% of the sellers to be getting more. And that way it allows each person to make their own adjustments. This is the sale price median for Silicon Valley on log paper. I like this because when you draw the best line, the straight line through it, you get your rate of appreciation. You can see that in 2021 and 2022, the prices were above where you'd expect to be. Then the last part of 2022 and the early part of 2023, we were way below. We're right back onto that line again. So now you'd expect just sort of upward appreciation, although you have to balance that with this is the time of the year where prices typically level off. This is the number of active listings. And now what we're doing is we're looking at the three components that make up Silicon Valley. We're looking at Santa Clara County in the blue, San Mateo County in the burnt orange, and Alameda County in the gray. San Mateo County is the smallest county. And if you look back, right now you're at 418. And if you look back, that's reasonable inventory. You'd say that San Mateo County has about the inventory you'd expect. But now let's look at Alameda County at 613 and Santa Clara County at 644. That's where we are now. But if you come back and look at where you are typically at this time of the year, you're somewhere north typically of 1,200 listings. So we have half the listings that we'd expect. And it's only when you add in San Mateo County that has 100% of its listings that we end up with somewhere around 70% of the listings we'd expect to have. Here are the offers accepted by the three counties. Santa Clara County is outperforming Alameda County on the number of listings. So we have a faster paced market. We had roughly the same inventory, but we're having more offers accepted. So that means we have a faster marketplace. Alameda County is next at essentially 850. And then San Mateo County is down here around 400. And San Mateo County has about the same number of inventory you'd expect. But now if you look at offers, we're only having 400. And what would you expect? You'd almost expect about 550 offers. They're slower than their typical marketplace. Normally you'd be selling 550 homes with the normal number of inventory. So that San Mateo County is slower. And you see that now in DUI. Here, San Mateo County is slower at 35 days, which is still a reasonable DUI. Don't get me wrong. But if you go back historically, before the pandemic, it was the fastest county, basically. And you can see that it really changed right here. At the end of 2019, it was the fastest marketplace. You went into 2020, and all of a sudden, it was right on top of one another because you have the slowdown for the end of the year holidays, which is delayed in your DUI. And then you had this big run up of COVID. And so everybody was right together. But as soon as we came out of COVID, San Mateo County sort of percolated to the slowest marketplace. Alameda County was initially the quickest, and right now Alameda County and Santa Clara County are basically on a dead tie and have been for well over a year, and San Mateo County is lagging behind. This is the 75th percentile days on marketplace. You can see Santa Clara County is fastest at 13 days, so just under 2 weeks. Alameda County is next at just over 2 weeks at 15 days, and San Mateo County is coming in at 18 days. And it may not sound like 18 days is not much, but if the vast majority of sellers and agents hold their property on the market, this is really going from 6 days to 8 days to 11 days. So going from 6 days to 11 days is more significant if you subtract off the week that people hold their house on the marketplace, because a lot of those numbers would be lower if that wasn't happening. Here's the magnitude of price reductions. This is the ask price reductions by the sellers. You can see in San Mateo County, it's at 99%, and you can see it's quite a bit bigger than Santa Clara County and Alameda County. Now, you may argue that 0.6 and 0.7% isn't much of a change, Richard, but remember, this is a very close index, so there is a huge difference from 99.7 and 99.6. They would be basically right at the bottom of a seller's marketplace or right at the top of a neutral marketplace. marketplace, and this is basically squarely in a buyer's marketplace. So it is a fairly marked difference between them, even though the magnitude of the graphs is not very much difference. This is the frequency of price reductions, and you can see that Alameda County has the least at maybe 8.5%, followed by Santa Clara County at maybe 9.2%, and then you slow down to San Mateo County at 13.3%. Here's the magnitude of overbidding. Alameda County is running away with this metric at 100 and almost 109% of the seller's asking price. So buyers are coming in on average 9% above asking price. Now you have to look at, this includes those buyers that go in under asking price as well as those that go way over. For the average to be 190, the 3/4 percentile, the 75 percentile would be significantly higher than that. I don't want to hazard a guess on the fly here. Then Santa Clara County next at 105%, and Santa Mateo County lagging behind it, essentially just shy of 104%. Here's the frequency of overbidding for the three counties, and again, Alameda County's out on top at 75, followed by Santa Clara County at 2/3 of sellers getting above their asking price, and San Mateo County a little bit slower at 63%. Here's the appreciation. You can see Alameda County and San Mateo County have roughly the same appreciation, and Santa Clara County has the highest appreciation at 184%, and that's since 2015. Here's the median price going back, so you can see that San Mateo County is back to their pricing in the second half of 2021. Santa Clara County is quite a bit above the pricing in the 2021, and Alameda County is right at their pricing of 2021, the second half. And that just gives you an idea, because when you're going through these kinds of rapid price changes, it's really hard to do a market analysis. So if you can come back here and find a price point where the market was pretty level, it gives you another data set to look at your market. Now, obviously the most weight is right here, but this, you can use this to make sure you're not off the mark. That was on log paper. This is on regular analog paper with the numbers labeled there for everybody. This is the payment numbers, and I don't believe the payment number got updated. So this is, I believe, the number, and that'd be $14,199.78 for the 90 percentile. I believe that's, the number is from 2 weeks ago. The data, I believe, is all the way current, although it's hard for me to tell on this graph. On the others, it was very clear it was current data. I didn't have time to check this graph, so I'm not sure. Here's those that want the actual numbers. We're looking at the May 27th, and where this data comes from is like a 5-week period of time, and a 5-week period of time is essentially it's 5 weeks. It's essentially a month. What's wrong with using monthly data is you have different number of weekends and weekdays, and that makes a huge difference. So anyway, your inventory has gone down. You'd expect that with Memorial Day holiday. The active inventory is down a little bit. Again, I'd expect that because less new sellers came on the marketplace. Offers accepted would be unchanged. Next week, I would expect an increase in the number of new offers, new listings on the marketplace, and a decrease in the number of new offers because there was less to choose from this week. You can see DUI has been fairly flat, but basically decreased 1.5 days. And again, about 5 days is my threshold if I really start paying attention. And here's your closed data, whatever data set you want to look at. Here is comparing sort of apples and oranges because I'm comparing June 5th of all the previous years with May 27th. Yes, it's close, but it's not identical. But it lets you look in, what's inventory typically at this time of the year, and you can see that we have limited inventory. You can come down here and say, what's the number of offers accepted? And you can see we've had a limited number of offers. In fact, we're below now 2020, and that's the first week we've been down below in a while. And then you come down to the number of closings, which of course are going to be way down. This compares apples and apples, but I don't like to do it because this is what most people do. Most people right now are comparing April data. April data is way in the rearview mirror, and that's one of the advantages of this data set is we're looking at current data right up to last night at midnight. I don't think you can get fresher than that. Here's the number of offers, and I deleted the pandemic numbers here. I deleted them because it was such an oddball number. What I was hoping to do is show the magnitude of our percent low, and they're roughly the same numbers up here. So these zeros are here because of this. Basically, you're somewhere in the 70 percentile. So not only are we having a record low, we're having a record low by 30% less inventory, and I wish I had those numbers to show you specifically, but I can't get them quickly. This is showing that Inventory in the purple is only 64% of what you'd expect. Offers are 74% of what you'd expect, both below what you expect, but offers are doing better than inventory, and therefore DUI is 85%. DUI being low is a fast-paced marketplace, so we're 15% faster than we normally are at this time of the year. Here's the data set that we started with and what we've gone over, so it's just there again for you to see anything that you want. And now we leave Silicon Valley, which was again Santa Clara County, San Mateo County, and Alameda County, and we move into the Greater Bay Area, which adds in San Francisco and Marin in region number 2, North Bay, Sonoma, Napa, Solano, Contra Costa is region 3, Central Valley, San Joaquin, Sacramento is region 4, and the 5th region is Santa Cruz and Monterey, the Central Coast. We're going to do the reversed order, start off with the data since we were just there. So here's your table of useful data sets. Now we're jumping right into the graphs, and this is the active inventory. You can see inventory, especially in both North Bay and Central Valley, is just crashed down. I mean, I don't know what number you want to pick, but you're basically the ballpark of 5,000. They went from 5,000 down to 1,600 and 1,800. That's a little more than a third, maybe 40% of their, well, it's less than 40%. It's between 33 and 40%. So call it 35% of the inventory you'd expect. You look at Silicon Valley, you know, we're down a little bit. And then you look at Central Coast and San Mateo County, and they're really not impacted nearly. No question, Central Valley and North Bay are impacted the most on the lack of inventory. This is the number of offers accepted. You can see that Santa Clara County has the most, followed by, I think that's North Bay. Yep, the gray's North Bay. Then you go into the Central Valley, and then San Mateo and Central Coast are the smallest. And they're the smallest counties, so you'd expect them to have the lowest number, and that's why they're down here. But, you know, the kinds of things you pick up is, you know, they're like San Mateo County. It's roughly at the same level as you'd expect it to be. Central Coast is down a little bit. All these are down. So San Mateo County is actually having more volume relative to normal than the other counties. Days of unsold inventory ranges from Silicon Valley. Looks like you got two right on top of one another. It looks like maybe 26 and 27, 31, 42, and 52. All fairly quick numbers, you know, and again, look at Central Coast. It's at 52, which is a higher number, but look at where they normally run. They're normally running at 80, so they're running lower than they normally are, which is a faster paced marketplace. Here's the 75th percentile. How long is it taking to sell the properties? And the slowest marketplace looks like it's the Central Coast at basically 5 weeks, tied with the North Bay. So that's sort of the outlying areas moving slower. And then you come in with orange, which is San Francisco and Marin, and then yellow is Central Valley at 28 days. And here's Silicon Valley at 16. If you're working in the Central Valley and you think the market's fast, just come over here to Silicon Valley and you'll go, whoa, where's the market at? Because there's a huge difference between 28 and 16 days. Here's the ask price reductions. You can see they're all pretty close together. 98.6% to 99.5%. So that's going from, that's your full range, you know, less than a percent swing. And again, that's why my number is so condensed. You can argue with what I pick. I try to use something logic. And if anyone's got a good argument on why my ranges should be changed, I'd be all ears, because that's what I'm trying to do, is improve what I'm presenting. Here's the ask price reductions frequencies. Not sure, this is probably this week's data not getting updated. So the data sets up here are probably last week's. This is the amount of overbidding. So the area that's having the most overbid is San Francisco at 106.8%, followed by Silicon Valley at 106.5. Then you jump down to North Bay at 102.5, then Central Valley at 101.5, and the Central Coast is under 100%. But if you look at Central Coast, it typically is below 100%. So it's important to compare the same marketplace. And yes, the counties are too big of a marketplace to really understand. That's why I broke Silicon Valley, which is 3 counties, into 17 micro market areas. And yes, I have all this data for those 17 micro market areas. Now you're looking at the Greater Bay Area, the overbid. So this is where the buyers come in. Central Coast is right at 100%. Then you have Central Valley at 0.3% above, followed by North Bay at 0.6 above. And then you jump up to San Francisco and the cities, San Francisco at 4% and Silicon Valley at 4.3% above seller's asking price. This is the frequency overbidding. How common is it? You can see Silicon Valley doing the best, followed by San Francisco Marin, then followed by North Bay, followed by the Central Valley, and then the Central Coast down at 41%. So even the Central Coast, the area that typically is doing the slowest, and you you can see that on this graph, almost 50%, 4 out of 10 sellers, 2 out of 5 sellers are getting more than their asking price. This is the appreciation. It is noteworthy that despite San Francisco doing real well, it's had the least amount of appreciation, less desirable with the lacking the need to commute in every day. And the Central Coast has had the most, followed by the Central Valley. So the outlying areas have had the most appreciation. Again, I believe that's pandemic related. Here's the greater monthly payments. These obviously did not get updated, but these do look like they're accurate numbers. You can see what the payments are doing, and the payments are increasing right now. And again, I'm using the Federal Reserve number for my rates. With that, we're finished. I'm open for any questions. We've been talking about week 21 of Silicon Valley. I add in the Greater Bay Area. If you want to join live, type in this screen URL on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. If you want to get to the archives on YouTube, add in the year at the end. So the purple and the green, a new URL combined. Add in H for handout, the year, month, date code, and you get the handout. Today's is not up there. I will be getting it up shortly. And with that, do I have any questions? Not seeing anyone's unmuting themselves. I will say goodbye and see everybody next week. Take care. Bye for now.